Hello, everyone. My name is Kyra Hargrove, and this is my preventive law plan for the Indiana Fever, the WNBA team. And this is for my sport law aspects class. So, yeah, let's just get into it. So, just a little executive summary before we start. This plan that I created outlines not only the reputational but also the legal risk facing the Indiana Fever. And a lot of these risks is due to the new popularity of this WNBA team that is driven largely by the new appearance of Caitlin Clark. So this focuses on media exposure, brand conflicts, public fan behavior, the new integration of NIL, and it also talks about some implementation of policies, plus training to reduce these kind of threats and conflicts that could occur. So, just a little bit of the history and the mission of the Indiana Fever. So, if you don't know, this is a WNBA franchise that was actually founded in 2000. So, their mission is winning championships and serving community. So, the Indiana Fever are really big on community and youth and giving back. And, like that third bullet says, um, helping with the development of youth and families in their community. So then just something else, Clark brought national attention with media exposure and record-breaking ticket sales. Um, I think a lot of us know Caitlin Clark played at Iowa, was a huge success, brought a lot of attention to women's sports. So then she went to the Indiana Fever, and now there's national attention on this Indiana Fever team. And like I said, they now have record-breaking ticket sales and just a lot more media exposure. And all of this just comes with even more risk. So, just some goals and core values of the Indiana Fever. Kind of like what I said it before with their mission statement, they are committed to winning and they are really big on that strong community presence. And so they love to give back to their community. And this also just builds a huge fan base for them as well. So the Indiana Fever is under the ownership of Pacer Sports and Entertainment, and they have four core values, and this is going to be teamwork, commitment, pride, and respect. They enjoy providing young people with access to books, not only books, but also technology. And then they engage in community partnerships. They promote wellness and fitness throughout their community, and they increase youth participation and community service. So, like I said before, they're not only about winning and about the actual basketball game, they also have this huge community presence where they're always constantly trying to help out with their community. So, this is a huge value for them. So now this is just going to be focusing a little bit on the financial side and some different industry trends that are happening. Um, so like I said, with this first bullet, they are now one of the WNBA's most valuable franchises because of this huge rise in women's sports. And with Caitlin Clark and this being the team that she chose, they're very valuable. So just some numbers for you. The 2025 valuations were approximately 370 million with a projected $32 million in revenue, which is pretty insane, mainly when you look at where women's sports were and where they are now. And so, like I said, a lot of this is from Clark's very big impact that she's had on merchandise. I mean, if you think about how many people are purchasing her jersey, and anything that has her number or her name on it. It also is from Clark's sponsorship, such as her sponsorship with Nike and these other big brands. And then, of course, the game attendance. These ticket sales are insane. Almost every game, like I said, or like you can see, the Indiana Fever average over 17,000 fans a game. Which is a huge increase within women's sports, which is awesome. So then with some different I'm so sorry, with some different industry trends, um, there has actually been an expansion of WNBA teams, Midwest and international play. And then if you look at that second bullet, addition of 18 new WNBA teams, which is just huge for this year. Um, Another thing, heightened fan engagement. There are so many more ticket sales, so many more fans coming to the game. These last couple years have just been huge in um, an increase in women's sports. Um, so then there is a lot of branding and new branding, which could lead to conflicts. A lot of new social media exposure, which also brings potential risk with, what athletes say on social media, what they say on podcasts, um, on TV. And then, of course, NIL turning sports into marketing. NIL just became huge, I don't know, a couple years ago. Um, and now it is very, very big in college sports and in the WNBA and in the NBA, of course. So, some key legal and risk issues. So, I kind of focus on four right here. Number one is fan and event safety. There are a lot more fans in the stadium now. Fans throwing objects onto the court can cause serious safety concerns, and this actually did happen at one of the games. Um, Another issue, branding conflicts. So, such as Clark's multi-million dollar deals, such as Nike, can conflict with team sponsors if the team sponsor, I don't know, is opposite from that brand or the values of these two brands don't align. This could cause a lot of conflict. So the third one is going to be social media risk. So viral content can lead to league fines. So, for example, this happened very, very recently. Sophie Cunningham was actually fined for some of her podcast comments, where she was talking about how she didn't agree with the ref's calls, and she was fined for this. So, something like that is a huge social media risk that can cause the league fines and loss of money. So then for the last risk that I address is NIL. Like I said before, this is huge now. And it's very detailed in how brands use it and how the league uses it. So, like I said, how teams use Clark's image or any other player, I'm just using Clark, but how teams use Clark's image commercially could lead to different usage, right? So, these are four main legal and risk issues that could occur for the Indiana fever. So now I'm going to be getting into the preventive law process. So these next slides are just going to be focused on, like I said, the preventive law process. So the first one we're going to be looking at risk identification, which we kind of just went over, but I'm just going to, reiterate it. So number one, fan misconduct, like I said, unsafe behavior at games is one of the worst things that could happen. A fan hurts a player, throws something on the court that hurts a player. So this is big. So this is something to definitely identify. Like I said, brands overlap, individual sponsor conflicts with a team sponsor. And then we have social media violation. So, controversial media statements, just like Sophie Cunningham's statement on the podcast, this can happen on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. There's so many social media platforms now. And so, players have to be very careful and they have to be trained on what they say, which we will get into later on. And then, of course, we have NIL rights, like I said. So there could be misuse of name, image, or likeness in content. Looks like I forgot the T, so, but in content. So now we're going to talk about just risk assessment. So what could these risks mean? How bad are they? Let's just talk about that. So first, we're going to go on to legal. So there are risks, of course, of lawsuits over the NIL, over the image rights. There are risks of penalties from the league for media violations. And I guess I didn't even put this on here, but you also have the risk of the brands, the conflict between a player brand and the team brand. So then financially, this is a potential loss of sponsors if it's something big enough. This is decreased. Sorry about that. This is decreased ticket revenue, fines from the league or for the league, and then, of course, lawsuit payouts. And then reputational. At this point, local issues can turn into more serious problems with national media coverage. So even if it's something small that you think is happening in the community, with this, post goes viral and the, national media is able to cover it, this can be huge and can hurt the team's image drastically. So it could be just like with the Sophie Cunningham, it could be a small podcast comment that could truly blow up and then potentially truly damage the team and their image. So now I'm going to let you guys kind of look at this. I'm going to go over it a little bit, but this is just risk evaluation. So I'm going over these four topics that we just talked about and going through the type, the frequency, the magnitude, the strategy. So we have unsafe fan behavior. It's low, but it's reoccurring. It could be severe because it could cause injury. Worse, safety issue. So my strategy for this is to, of course, increase security and then enforce fan conduct policies. So then the next one we have right below that, conflict, the type, conflict between team sponsor and player endorsement. Frequency, this could happen occasionally. Magnitude, high, it could lead to a legal dispute, which would not be ideal at all. So the strategy for this is to require legal review of all endorsement contracts. So the next one we have is unauthorized use of NIL. So the frequency of this would be occasional. Magnitude, moderate to high. There could be a potential lawsuit with this. So, like I said, not ideal. Strategy, obtain written approval for all commercial use. And we've also learned about this in our course. It's always so important to have written approval, not just verbal. So, something else we have is the public controversy from social media posts by a player or even a staff. So, frequency, this is going to be pretty frequent. Magnitude, moderate. This could lead to fines or image damage, but usually not a lawsuit or anything legal. And then the strategy, it's very important to provide social media training and, of course, establish different media policies for what can be on social media. So now a little bit of risk control. So for unsafe fan behavior, here are some things. We could have security extended for high attendance games. For example, when Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese play, it's always a huge game. So for these kind of games, there needs to be extra security. Everything needs to be extra taken care of, if that makes sense. Staff trained on emergency procedures. There's a lot of times, things happen that you're not expecting, and you need to know how to handle that, or the staff needs to know how to handle that. And then just monitoring fans on video surveillance, if making sure if you see a fan being rowdy, you kind of watch over and make sure nothing happens with that. So then below that, for endorsement, overlap risk, like we talked about, required review of all sponsorships is very necessary. And then it's also important to identify any potential conflicts within team and player contracts. For social media controversies, there needs to be clear and written media guidelines. There needs to be mandatory training for players and staff. And there also needs to be a pre-check system for high-risk posts. So, for example, if there's a big post going out for a big brand, there should be someone who authorizes it, who makes sure, okay, this is clear, you can post this. So then for conflicts with NIL, I think it's really important to maintain like a database of all the approved content, And then with that, there needs to be required, like I said, written, not verbal consent for commercial use that's like outside of the league's approved campaigns. So then how are we going to implement this? So here's some strategies. Policy communication. There needs to be social media and endorsement policies communicated and distributed during preseason. Needs to get out of the way before season actually starts. We also need to have some workshops. So quarterly sessions focused on media conduct, NIL risk, and overall media public speaking engagement. So basically teaching the players and the staffs how to do the public speaking, like I said, the NIL, media conduct, just how to do this appropriately. And then monitoring compliance officers to track and improve social media content. Like we said before, make sure everything is appropriate before it's posted. Enforcement, of course, there needs to be some kind of discipline if things aren't handled appropriately. Discipline for violations could start with warnings and then end up leading to fines or even, in serious cases, suspensions. And then finally, review. There needs to be annual reviews because things change all the time. Media changes all the time. Technology changes all the time. So there needs to be annual reviews to revise different protocols based on new risks that could, of course, occur.